If you like painting and saving, ask Sherwin-Williams and save 40% on paints and stains during our 4-day super sale, July 18th through the 21st. With 40% off our paints and stains and 30% off painting supplies, you can give your whole home a color makeover. But hurry, these savings are so super, they won't be around for long. Find your nearest store at sherwinwilliams.com/sale. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
Blog Talk Radio.
Namaste, everybody. Welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. This is July 16th, 2014. I am your host, Andrew Fisher, exposing the true and false nature of reality for what it is and what it isn't every Wednesday, normally from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But today it's going to be, 9 to 11 it's supposed to be. We're going to have Marty Leeds on. He's a symbolism and numerology expert who was at the Free Your Mind 2013 conference. I see he just called into the show. We're going to do news first, but again, Marty Leeds, he is in the Western time zone, and that's why I had to schedule the show later. He said he may have to cut early because he has some work to do, last-minute emergency. Hopefully that won't happen, but the show's supposed to go till 11 p.m. Eastern. If it ends early because he has to split unexpectedly for work, then that's understandable. But first, we're going to do the news, courtesy of Alex Jones and company at InfoWars. A lot of stuff on illegal immigration here, no surprise there, because they've been covering a lot of that recently on InfoWars. It is a big deal. Illegals coming into this country, and the government is going to use them to take our jobs. They took my job. Yeah, I don't want to be saying that, and I don't think the rest of the American people want to either. But anyway, here, first article, detained MS-13 gang member aggressive toward Texas police officer. Officer warns gang may be in the process of recruiting new members. Yes, I believe this is a Mexican gang, and, a lot of gangs are controlled by the government to some extent. Not just the Mexican government, but the American government as well. So a lot of people say we need guns, the right to bear arms to protect ourselves from government, and also gang violence. And that goes double if the gangs are controlled by the governments. All right, next article. Illegals to be sheltered in Los Angeles while homeless remain on street. Homeless Americans represent zero political capital for Democrats and Obama. Yeah, the illegals are to be sheltered so the government can use them to take our jobs so they can crash the economy and put us all in poverty, which is what they want to do, because they're evil. That's what the New World Order, who controls the government, wants to do. Next article, House Democratic Leader Pelosi flip-flops on deportations. Democrat withdrew support after Republicans balked at huge funding request. Yeah, don't give any funding for illegal immigration. I mean, there's a little bit of a debate here. Some people say that the right to liberty, right to travel, right to locomotion should make it perfectly legal for someone to cross borders without any government permission or paperwork filing. But at the same time, there has to be a process when you're dealing with a country like Mexico, which is filled with a lot of gang members and all and such. And it's not like we're bordering Switzerland, as Alex Jones said on his Sunday show, where we could have more leeway in having people come over, because people in Switzerland are a lot more nicer and generous, and they're also a lot more safer because the people in Switzerland have the right to bear arms. Lowest crime rate in Europe, Switzerland has, and the citizens there have the right to bear arms, unlike all the other European countries. Coincidence? I think not. All right, next article. Israel supporters defend gunboat slaughter of 4 boys playing football on a beach. Israel is under attack and fighting back. Gunboat slaughter of 4 boys playing football on a beach. Is this football or soccer? Well, whatever the case, it's downright disgusting that Israel would support the slaughter of anybody. And, Israel, that's Rothschild Zionism for you. That's what the Star of David on Israel's flag represents. Nothing Jewish about it. It's a satanic symbol because it symbolizes Saturn, and Saturn symbolizes Satan, and the Rothschild Zionists who controlled Israel and created Israel for their global de facto headquarters. The Mossad is the global de facto CIA headquarters of the Rothschild Zionists. And they do a lot of their operations there. For all intents and purposes, Benjamin Netanyahu, a Rothschild Zionist, is the real president of the United States. And it's not shocking that Israel would support doing this to innocent children. I don't know how old these boys were, but still, you don't do that to people. Our next article, free luxury resort for illegals has $1,000+ rooms for rent. Obama administration funds hotel for undocumented immigrants. Yeah, so what else is new? They'll use the illegal immigrants and give them luxurious accommodations, free driver's licenses and all. Oh, it's sick. Next article, foster agency seeks caseworkers, families for illegal alien refugees. Illegal suddenly labeled refugees, even though violence in Central America has been going on for over 10 years. Another agency that's going to help illegal aliens. Disgusting. Next article, liberals want Elizabeth Warren on Supreme Court. Massachusetts Democrat supports Federal Reserve. Yeah, we don't need a Federal Reserve supporter on the Supreme Court. Well, the Supreme Court is Archon-controlled, Rothschild Zionist-controlled, and New World Order-controlled. Unless there's a lot of people demanding the Supreme Court rule a certain way, then it's relatively easy for the Supreme Court to rule however they want. So, because they're controlled by the Archons. So if you want the Supreme Court or any court in general to not make tyrannical rulings and make sure that they understand that they're supposed to allow people to win cases if they have the law and the facts on their side, then public opinion is huge when it comes to court rulings, just like any other government situation. So keep that in mind. We don't want this woman on our court because she's a Federal Reserve supporter. Federal Reserve wants to bankrupt us. They loan us money that doesn't exist and charge us interest on it. And that makes debt and inflation unavoidable. That's why the economy is set up to fail. The monetary system, the economy, the money is the blood flow, the heart chakra of planet Earth, and that shows that planet Earth is set up to have a heart attack because our financial system is set up to fail. All right, one last article here before I get Marty Leeds on. Poll, majority reject Obama policies because they're bad, not because of racism. Eric Holder's racial animus is a desperate and pathetic attempt to pass soft record low approval ratings. Eric Holder, I believe he was saying that if you're against me, you're racist. And my God, Eric Holder, he lies so much. Fast and Furious was just the tip of the iceberg. We really need to brainwash people into thinking negatively about guns, he said in 1995 when he was Deputy Attorney General. And now people are against him and Obama, not because of their color. Oh, no, it's because they're flat out evil. And they're puppets to a great extent. So I'm going to get Marty Leeds on right now. I believe this is him. Area code 541. Area code 541. Is this Marty Leeds?
It is. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine. And I'm glad to have you on. I've always wanted to have a numerology expert on my show for quite a while, and I realized you were the perfect candidate when I watched your presentation. I wasn't there for the conference. I was only there for one day, not the day you were there, I think, but the Free Your Mind 2013 conference. You gave a great presentation, a lot of stuff to discuss there. I guess we might as well use that presentation as a guide, and I'll come up with some great questions to ask you. Great to have a numerology expert on because numerology, like astrology, is not a quack science. There's definitely truth to it. I mean, I personally don't look at horoscopes or numerological readings. I consider it to be an unnecessary thing to do in life. I just live my life to the fullest and let the stars and planets in the case of astrology or the number system in the case of numerology just guide me through and help me make the most of my life. But at the same time, I acknowledge numerology is real, and that's why it's great to have you on. So that seems to be your specialty, I'm guessing, but we'll talk about other things. Hopefully you won't have to split for work, but let's do this. Let's talk about numerology. I'd like to know the history of numerology, and please tell us how numerology works, how you determine numerological codes and all, and then after that, silence the skeptics, silence the critics, and make people understand that numerology is real. You got the floor. Talk as long as you want on this subject.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to cover. Numerology, first and foremost, has been around as long as mathematics. And in fact, there has only been this sort of dichotomy or division between what we consider mathematics that is being taught in our, universities and classrooms and things like that. And there's been sort of this division between numerology and mathematics. And what I'm trying to do is trying to bridge that division and let people know that what really numerology allows us to do is get a greater understanding of not only the mathematics that is being taught in our school systems, in the college and university, but it also gives us a deeper insight into the human condition and the human experience and things like that, and all the ways that we can start to really kind of pick apart or actually find connectivity in our world through numerological principles, base numerological principles, and things like secret societies, things like symbols, things this sort of thing. So this This is numerology. I mean, I go into a lot of different things in the work that I do. I cover not only numerology, but I also cover symbolism, comparative mythology, and my main focus is called, one of the main focuses is sacred geometry, and then also a thing called gematria. And I'm sure we'll get into this talk, but and really what a lot of these sciences are, like you mentioned, astrology, we're talking about numerology, gematria, symbolism. What these sciences are the occult sciences. And these are the sciences that have basically been completely dismissed by all modern, the prevailing paradigm or the modern mentality. Most people do not consider numerology to be an actual science. Most people don't consider astrology to be an actual science. And the work that I'm engaged in is trying to bring these things to light and show how they can be used very rationally, very reasonably. And not only that, show how the people that are in power right now, the people that are kind of behind the scenes that are pulling the strings, the puppeteers of the world, if you will, these are the sciences that they study. And the point that I really try to hammer home with these things is that we sit there and rail against people in power, and because we just assume that they're all evil. Well, most of them are. Let's just face it. Let's call a spade a spade. But the thing that I like to say is that when we look into what these people know, the knowledge system that they hold, the knowledge system that they use, this occult base of knowledge, is not an evil system of knowledge. There's nothing evil about it. It's only how it's used, and this is very easy to understand. I mean, you had mentioned something. I was listening before I got on. You had mentioned that the Star of David is this satanic evil symbol. It's actually not. It has nothing to do with evil. Can it be used for evil? Oh yeah, absolutely. But the problem is that these people have hijacked this system of knowledge and then put these symbols out there in this evil way. Obviously, when most people see the Star of David, they attribute it to Zionism. And, well, they should, because the Zionists have taken hold of it. But there's nothing evil about the Star of David. In fact, this is the next video that I'm going to do about the Star of David and all the wonderful things that we can get through it. The psychology, the philosophy, the numbers, what it means about the human experience and how to understand your own, the human mind and human psychology. So to get back to the numerological aspect of this is that numerology and numbers and mathematics and geometry are at the base of our creation. And this is what these people know. This is what these people know. And this is why when you went to school and when I went to school and most of the people that are listening to this went to school, they got turned off by mathematics. People cringe. They kind of, when they deal with mathematics, it's like, oh my God, this is a headache. And there's a reason for this. There's an absolute reason for this, because this was obviously deliberate. It was intentional to try to steer people away from understanding the deep truths behind these things. Beautiful, simplistic, elegant truths that lie behind these symbols, these mathematical principles, and things like that. So this is what my work is, what I am engaged in, what I'm trying to bring forward to the public, that there is a beauty and a simplicity and an elegance to these things, and that we can't just paint them into a corner as some sort of satanic thing. So that's kind of, what I'm doing right now. So, to explain who I am, I'm, Marty Leeds 33 you can get me at martyleeds33.com. I'm on YouTube, YouTube.com/Marty Leeds 33, and I have a whole lecture series there, like 50 or 60 lectures that are absolutely free that you can walk through, and this covers everything from, like I said before, numerology, symbolism, gematria, Kabbalah, things like this. And then I also have a podcast. I just started. I'm actually uploading my 4th episode tonight. It's called the Marty Leeds Mathemagical Radio Hour, and you can get that at www.thesyncbook.com. And, and then I also have a free blog at world-mysteries.com. And I'm also a musician. You can get me at reverbnation.com, and that's Marty Leeds. Marty Leeds 33, I think is what it is. So for the people that are listening, there's a lot of interesting things. I'm sure we'll get into depth into some of these things, but there's a lot of really interesting things for you to check out for basically absolutely free. So that's kind of an introduction anyway.
Okay, you can talk about numerology now in regards to how it works. It's something involving if you have a 2-digit number, you do something with the numbers, and then after you do that, that's the numerological reading of the number. I must say I plead a little ignorance on this, but I'd like you to talk about how that works and what's that used for anyway.
Okay, yeah, I can elaborate on. Let's look at some of the core principles of numerology. Well, let's look at the core principle of numerology. Numerology is basically the idea of breaking any number down to the digits 0 through 9. This is called Kabbalistic reduction or decimal parity or digital rooting or Pythagorean addition. And what this allows you to do is kind of get to the essence or the quality of a number, and understand that numbers really embody what I like to call cosmological principles, or sort of the laws of nature within them. And you can understand that through numerology that there are basically 10, that's the base 10 system is essentially the system, or the decimal system, essentially the system that is at work in the entire universe. And this is what numerology allows us to really come to understand. So when you look at, we're just going to walk up our number line. So 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. When you get to 10, you can just add 1 plus 0 is 1. You get to 11, 1 plus 1 is 2. 12, 1 plus 2 is 3. 13, 1 plus 3 is 4. So it doesn't matter how, a complex or large a number is. It can always be broken down to the digits 0, the digits 1 through 9. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 actually gives you 10 digits. Now, why is this important? This is the crux of numerology. This is really where this is what allows us to understand that the universe and what we've been given in this universe is much more simple and eloquent and easier to understand than I think that we've been taught. And so this is like I say, the core principle of numerology. Now, these 10 digits, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, have been heralded and venerated in many different mystical, esoteric ways. Number one, we all know, well, just look at your hands. Just look down at your 10 fingers. That's what the universe or God or the Creator, or Allah, Amu, Jehovah, Jah, Ra, whatever it is you believe, this is how it's speaking to you. It's giving you the numbers that it used to create the universe, and it gave you those numbers right on your two hands. So we find this number 10, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 being 10 digits. We find it sort of all over in mysticism and esoterica and, alchemical ideas and, ideologies and things like that. So the first, number one, your 10 fingers, and then you also have the 10 commandments. And, of course, these are everyone knows the 10 commandments. We can find this in the Pythagorean Tractus. Now, the Pythagorean Tractus was this mathematical idea of it's just a pyramid, and it's just the digits 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and it's in this sort of pyramidal form. And so these are when you add 1, 2, 3, 4 together, you get 10. So once again, we're back to those 10. You can go to the Kabbalistic tree of life. Most people know this from any sort of Jewish study, Kabbalistic study. This is in the Sefer Yetzirah, this sort of thing. And it's the 10 emanations of God. And what this is talking about is these ancient mystics were understood that God, if you will, speaks to us in language and number. And this is found right on your two hands once again. So numerology, once again, this is completely dismissed in our modern academia, but really what it does is allows the average everyday person like myself to really get a firm grasp of the language of mathematics and how this language works throughout our world. So that's sort of the base of numerology. Hopefully that answers that question enough.
Yes, it does, but I'm kind of interested to know, like you said, every number can be broken down to 1 through 9. Okay, so if you have a number that's 100 digits long, how would you go through the process of determining what that numerological reading for that number is?
Oh, it's literally you just add them up. It's like that Violent Venom song, add them up. You literally just add them up. So, for instance, if we had a number like 987,654,321, right? Well, all you'd have to do is add 9 plus 8 plus 7 plus 6 plus 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1, and you're going to get 45. And then all we can add is 4 plus 5 is 9. And so we can see that a number like 987,654,321 will reduce down to find its quality, to find its essence, to the number 9. Now, who gives a crap, right? This is just playing with math and that sort of thing. But when we actually go to look at the construction of our universe, we can find that there's we can easily recognize patterns within the universe. We can easily recognize that there is once again a simplicity to our creation. And we can see this, for instance, when we look at, let's look at the sun, the moon, and the earth. So the diameter of the sun is 864,000 miles. Well, 8 plus 6 plus 4 is 18, and 1 plus 8 is 9. So if we look at the diameter of the sun and we use this decimal reduction, this numerological principle, it reduces down to 9. Let's go to the moon. The diameter of the moon is 2,160 miles. Well, 2 plus 1 plus 6 plus 0 is 9. Once again, same thing. Let's go to the Earth. The diameter of the Earth is 7,920 miles. Well, 7 plus 9 plus 2 is, once again, 18, and 1 plus 8 is 9. So we can see that this number 9 is very prevalent and is a principal number in the creation of the harmony and the ratios between the heavenly bodies that we're surrounded by. Of course, that being the sun, we're on the Earth, and of course the sun and the moon. And so this is why we once again we can see that there's a very simple elegance to these things. Now, when we look at how modern theory is kind of trying to unravel or deconstruct or understand the creation of our universe, it's very convoluted. It's very ugly. It's this sort of thing. But when you get into the study of numerology and you actually give it a chance and investigate it thoroughly, you recognize that the universe isn't this extremely complex thing that our simple human mind can't understand. No, actually quite the contrary. It's very simple to understand. Now, if you're in a position of power, right, and you covet power and you are creating an educational system, well, obviously you're not going to teach these things. I mean, you're obviously going to keep this from the general public, so you understand these principles, and the general public does not. And this is kind of where it gets into the conspiracy theory of me, because when you look at our modern educational systems, I mean, to me, they're absolutely horrendous. Now, most of the people graduated these systems, just like I did, just like you did. And then we go into the world and try to understand the world. And really what we've been done is, what we've had done to us is the conditioning, the propaganda, these sorts of things, the dumbing down. And so we go out into the world without understanding these very simple principles that allow us to understand the world, and then we try to comprehend the thing. And this is an enormous problem. Because when you start to understand the simple principles like numerology, when you start to understand simple things like some of the things that are elucidated within very simple sacred geometrical principles, you realize that, really what it allows you to do is see that people of the past that have not been tainted by some sort of control faction that has once again dumbed us down or conditioned us or tried to manipulate us in every sort of facet, you understand that these ancient people could have very easily come to these ideas through nature and therefore have a deeper understanding and deeper connection to nature. We could say nature, we could say the universe, we could say the divine. And so this is the experience that I've had going through this stuff. So, and this is why I feel like it's so important, and hence why geometry has been considered sacred, because it is this sort of language of the creator of nature that allows you to have a union with it, have a relationship with it in a very, very interesting and once again beautiful way. And so this is what numerology allows you to do. Now, once again, numerology, this is just a study that anybody can make. Now, there's nothing good nor evil about numbers. It's just like there's nothing good nor evil about symbols, right? It's just how it's used. And so this is the thing that I'm really trying to stress when we look into these things, because it's, we especially with how much baggage has been laid on the occult. Right? We've just been bombarded throughout our at least with me growing up. It's just like, don't look into the occult, that's evil, that's dark, that's satanic, don't look into that. And of course, I was always just kind of this rebellious kid that said, well, fuck that, I'm going to go check it out myself. And then when you do, you realize that there's a lot of beauty there. And this has been hijacked. So once again, this is what I'm trying to explain to people and try to really teach in a way that they can grasp it themselves.
Well, I'm glad you are, because this is stuff that's not taught in everyday public school system. One thing I'd like to ask you, it's been said that many of the great astronomers were not astronomers, they were astrologers. Astronomy was their hobby. Is there any truth to the statement that many of the great mathematicians were not actually mathematicians, they were numerologists, and mathematics was their hobby?
Well, what this is once again like kind of dividing these things. like we say that, mathematics isn't numerology or astronomy isn't astrology. I think that, basically when you look at sort of, let's look at it this way, like the left and right hemispheres of your brain. Right, you basically have these sort of like two modes of thinking, where it's like you in one respect you think it's a creative mode of thinking. We could say it's a feminine mode of thinking. We could say it's a imagination. It's nonlinear. It's non-local. This sort of thing. So there's one aspect of thinking like that, and then the other aspect of thinking is the analytical, the very quantitative, the very that sort of idea, linear, if you will. Now, really, when you look at something like astronomy. Well, that in one respect is the straight up measurement of the stars and things like that, right? So that's, if you will, that's the left brain side, and then the astrology would be the right brain side, right? So if we want to get a full comprehension of this universe and everything that the heavens that surround us, well, we have to merge both of those studies into one unified study, and it's only the separation that allows this sort of dichotomy or binary polemic between the left and the right hemispheres of the brain. Same sort of thing with mathematics, right? Numerology would be the right hemisphere of the brain. It's the creative side. The mathematics would be the left. So it's really, once again, the merging of the two to give us a full comprehension. I mean, to me, looking at this stuff now, it's like, I think you would be absolutely foolish to dismiss numerology, right? And I'm also trying to make the case that I think you would absolutely be foolish to dismiss astrology, right? But the problem with a lot of the moderns when they look at astrology is that we've been forced into this, we've been forced into the dichotomy, right? You're either some New Age mystic and you're completely right-brained, or you're an atheist and agnostic and you're in the left hemisphere of the brain. Well, really what we have to do is just break that boundary. We have to break that wall. We have to crush break down the wailing wall, if you will, between those two hemispheres of your brain and bring those two together. And this is the mind working to its fullest, in my opinion. And this is something that this left and right is something that is shown all over. And it's the merging of the two. In the Mayan like iconography or their symbols, they have something called the Hunabku. And what it is basically this sort of drawing that's black and white, and they're swirling with one another. And most people know this from the yin-yang symbol, the Taoist Chinese symbol of, once again, the black and white swirling or merging with one another. In Freemasonry, you have the pillars of Jachin and Boaz, right? And, of course, this is the left and right, once again. And it's really, in order to truly comprehend your world, you have to merge both of those. So if we reject astrology and only go for astronomy, we're not going to get a full comprehension of our world. If we only go with mathematics and reject numerology, we're not going to have that full comprehension of the world. So hopefully that answers your question anyway.
Yes, it does. And even though I don't look at numerological readings, just like I don't look at astrological horoscopes because I think it's unnecessary, I just go through life the best I can and let the stars, or in like this case, the number system, guide me. But I'm sure there's a lot of people that would assert, you're missing out on all the fun. You should every so often do a numerological reading. Well, I don't know if I will, but just for the hell of it, Marty, for someone who's never done a numerological reading and maybe wants to experiment with it, could you give some good advice on a beginner's guide to doing your first ever numerological reading and how to progress after you do your first reading?
Well, I don't do numerological readings, so I don't know if I can even answer that question. And the reason is because, to me, you have to understand the subject of mathematics and numerology yourself. And this is something that you have to make yourself. I don't even view astrology really too much in that context. I don't know where it's sort of this, I want to say, personal divination or something like that. But I don't really look at numerology and astrology in that context, and I don't do numerological readings. I don't even know if I guess I've done one on myself. I've looked at the mathematics in depth of my own name and that sort of thing. But to me, I really don't do that, because to me, the person that has to make that study is you. And so the best advice I could give somebody is, if they were going to do this, is that just like anything in our world, you have to go and fully comprehend what you're talking about. If you're going to truly understand how the motions of the planets affect you, or what if the moon is in the third house and Mercury's in retrograde. Well, you better, to truly understand what those things are, how they're going to affect you, that sort of idea, you better have a full comprehension of the subject that you're looking into. And I feel like most people don't. The problem especially with numerology, especially with astrology, is that this is where flakiness flourishes. Let's just be honest. This is where there is a mass amount of woo-woo, and let's just call it what it is, bullshit. And so I don't like to really steer towards that stuff, because to me there's a whole level to subjects like symbolism, astrology, numerology, things like this that really is absolutely scientific, not necessarily interpretive, if you know what I'm saying.
I can understand that. It's cool and all, but thanks for trying to answer the question. I'd also want to talk about something else involving numbers that you've tried to become an expert on, and that is pi. What is pi? Well, many people would say multiply the diameter of a circle by the number pi, you will get the circumference. But you seem to assert there's a whole lot more to the number than just that. So tell us the who, what, when, where, why, and how of the number pi, please.
Okay, so the work that I'm involved in is based around this number pi, and it's a very mysterious and very kind of elusive number. And why, I guess, is the question. Well, most people haven't studied mathematics enough to really know why. So what is pi? Pi is the ratio of the circle's circumference to its diameter, right? Well, so basically, if you make your diameter 1, your circumference is going to be this. It's going to give you this infinite number. So it's 3.14159265358979323. It goes on and on and on and on. It's this infinite number. And so when I looked into this, I pursued a holistic understanding of my world, I guess, and this universe. When I went into this study, I looked at pi in this way of the numerology behind pi, the symbolism behind pi, right? The sacred geometry behind pi, and try to merge all these things together into one holistic, unified study. Now, pi has been this sort of thorn in the side of mathematicians for a long time. And the question is, basically, look what you're doing, right? You're drawing a perfect circle, and then you're drawing a line down this thing. And what you're doing is finding the relationship between these two geometric forms. And what you end up with is this infinite number. And there's been 10 trillion digits of pi that have been calculated thus far. And when you step back and think about this philosophically, it's like, what the hell is going on? All you did was draw a perfect circle in a line, and you get this infinite number. And so to me, this was the universe sort of asking a question. This was the universe giving us a clue, a key into understanding everything about the human experience, whether that's the words that come out of our mouth, and maybe we'll get into gematria after this, whether that's the words that come out of our mouth, whether that's understanding the zodiac in our sky, whether that's understanding the energy within the human vessel, being, you could say that, prana, chi, spirit, whatever you want to call it, understanding multiple facets of our reality and allow you to bring them all together into one, once again, unified, holistic, holy science, if you will, with pi being sort of this central, what I like to call a central vertices, a central vertex in the archetypal architecture of our creation. So pi, this is pi. Now, the important thing to understand about pi is that when you go to find the area of a circle, right? So we're going to try to go to find the area of a circle. Well, you can't actually do this. It's impossible to really do, because at some point you have to approximate this number pi. Okay, so if it's 10 trillion digits, even if you calculate 10 trillion digits, at some point you have to approximate that number, and then therefore you once again, you're not getting the entire the area of a circle. Why this is important is that there's a deep symbolism and philosophy behind this. When in sacred geometrical study, heaven is known as a circle, as a 3, and earth is known as a 4, as a square. And this is a very, very consistent theme that you see within, the most prevalent place that we can find this is actually in the Freemasonic square and compasses, which most people know. Once again, we're going to look at this and we're going to say, oh, that's a Freemason symbol. Evil, right? No, actually not. It's only been used for evil. There's nothing evil about it. What this symbol is doing is actually there's a compass that's pointing up to the heavens and a square that's pointing down to the earth. Now the circle is the heaven, and this is known once again in Freemasonry. This is known in Taoist study. This is known in, I think, Buddhism as well. In building the Buddhist stupa, they have this. It's known in alchemy. So we see this motif again and again and again, with the heaven being a circle and earth being a square. Well, why it's important that heaven is a circle is because we can never truly calculate the heavens. And this is what pi is representing philosophically, because just like we can't go out and reach every single star on the heavens, we can only approximate that. We can only imagine when it really comes down to it, because when you think about it, we can't fully comprehend the whole universe at once. It's non-simultaneously comprehended, if you will, right? You just can't do it. But we can measure the earth. We can measure the earth. We can actually take a tape and go and measure this earth, right? Well, why that's important is that earth is known as a square. Well, we can always find the area of the square, always, because all we have to do is square something. So what this does is allow, within the mathematics themselves, allows you to understand, well, let's just say the heavens and the earth, and allows you to bring these two together once again in a holistic study. And this is what the Freemasonic square encompasses, is actually one of the myriad things that this thing is trying to unveil to humanity. Now, I'm going to get back to pi just a second here, but I want to talk a little bit about Freemasonry. Now, people most often have this gut reaction to Freemasonry. They see, and I'm not a Freemason, to let you know. I don't subscribe to any particular religion. I'm not a Freemason. I don't belong to any fraternal brotherhood. I'm a secret society. I'm completely independent, all of that. So if anybody wants to sort of laud that at me, it's a fallacy. When we see Freemasons, we see evil, right? Well, you know what? The Freemasons, in their original inception, were not evil at all. What they were trying to do, once again, when this was created in, I think it was like the 15th, 16th, 17th century, around then, was trying to pass on these deep occult truths about how to understand the nature of reality. And this organization has only been hijacked by people with sort of these nefarious goals in mind. People that are infiltrating this group and using this group to, well, I mean, if you go, it's just like, let me give you a terrible example. It's like if your mom made blueberry pancakes and they're effing delicious, right? And then somebody goes and takes a shit on those blueberry pancakes. And then you look at the blueberry pancakes and you're like, look, those are shitty. You know what I mean? I'm making the worst analogy here. But the point is the same thing has happened to Freemasonry. Same thing has happened to Freemasonry. In its original inception, it was this absolutely holistic organization that was trying to pass on these deep occult truths. And it's only been shat upon, if you will. It's only been infiltrated. And so this is one of the things that I think people need to realize. And this is going back to what we talked about before, about the fact that is when we see these things, like when you were mentioning the Star of David, it's like, that's an evil symbol. No, it's not. You're incorrect about that. It's not a satanic symbol. Has it been used for satanic things? Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what we see right now. The point that I'm trying to make is that we need to bring this information back. We need the common man needs to take this occult wisdom back and use it, because this is what is going to allow us to understand these control factions, understand, who is behind the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission and the Bilderberg Group and all of these things, because this is the knowledge that they have, and this is the knowledge that they are keeping from you and I. So this is something that is very, very important, that I think that people that are listening to this, or people that are all over the world that are trying to just laud all of these things at Freemasonry and things like that, we have to be very careful about that, because we're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And so I just wanted to say that. And I actually, the podcast I'm about to upload tonight is with Richard Casaro. Richard Casaro is a Freemason. I spoke with him for an hour. He wrote a book called Written in Stone. And this book is fantastic. It's beautiful. And what he was explaining is the exact same thing. He feels the exact same way. It's like, hey, man, this is beautiful information. This helps you understand human psychology. This understands the human vessel. This understands your relationship to the heavens. This helps you understand all of these different facets of our reality. And this has been hijacked. This has been hijacked. And so the people that are out there that are pointing their finger at Freemasonry and saying evil, you have to be careful. And this is my underlying message. So I just wanted to cover some things about Freemasonry here. Once again, I'm not a Freemason, and I'm certainly not supporting any sort of religious organization, any sort of fraternal brotherhood, any of that. I'm not supporting any of that. I'm just trying to clarify these things for people, because what Freemasonry is a recapitulation of the Egyptian mystery the Grecian mystery schools, the Egyptian mystery schools, what was understood in the whole corpus of alchemy. This is what, and we cannot forget this, because this is going to help us understand who we are, where we're going, and what's going on with our world right now. So I just want to clarify that. So let's get back to pi. Now, Freemasonic squaring compasses, we have a compass pointing up to the heavens, and that's you're creating a circle. And once again, we can't find that area of that circle. And that talks about pi. And then, of course, we have the square pointing down. And so basically what you have is this idea of divine consciousness and base consciousness. So the square pointing down is the earthly consciousness. It's the terrestrial consciousness. And then, of course, we have that compass pointing up, and that's the celestial consciousness. And you are the merging of those two. You're the merging of the as above and the so below. And so this is one of the things that is being expressed in the Freemasonic squaring compasses, as well as being expressed in the Star of David. So now pi. One of the approximations of pi that we find most often used in like architecture and geometry and calculus and algebra and things like that is 3.142. So, and this can be begotten by whole numbers. So, like, we're going to take 22 divided by 7 is 3.142, right? And this is a widely used approximation of pi. Once again, we have to approximate this number. So, why is this important? Well, we can actually find this number twice in our alphabet. And this is where we can go into sort of the cornerstone of the work that I'm doing. And this will probably take like 15 minutes to go over if that's cool. I'm going to kind of talk about the cipher if that works for you.
I'll go right ahead.
Okay. So the Freemasonic squaring compasses, right? We see there's a compass pointing up and a square pointing down, and there's a G in the center there. Well, what are they talking about? It's always been a mystery. What's that G? What's going on? Well, what they're talking about is ultimately I'm not saying that the G absolutely means this, because it means many different things. One of the things that is being taught, what's being expressed within the Freemasonic squaring compasses, is a study called gematria. Now, most people know this as Jewish Kabbalah. They know it from, once again, the 10 emanations of God, the 10 Sephiroth, the Kabbalistic tree of life, the Sefer Yetzirah, these ideas. It's known as Kabbalah. Many people are hip to it because, Madonna supposedly practices it or whatever, who cares? But in English, this is known as gematria. And what gematria and Kabbalah is an ancient artistic science of putting numbers to letters. And allowing us to see that not only is there a structure behind the very words that we're speaking, but that this structure is in one way, at least according to the Kabbalists of old, the alchemists of old, according to, and my own study, this is how I feel as well, that this allows us to understand the nature of the divine and how the divine works through us. So this is called gematria. It's called putting numbers to letters. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at this phenomenon, and we're going to look at it as it is unveiled to us in the English language. So, number one, anything that I'm talking about here, you do not have to believe me. You can go and check all of this stuff out. I have like 60 lectures on my YouTube site. You can look at all of this for free. You can walk through the deconstructions. You can do all the math yourself. I'm not asking you to believe me. What I'm asking you to do is make a proper investigation into what I'm saying. And the problem is most people aren't going to do that. I mean, you yourself said, I'm not really into numerology. I'm not going to do these readings and things like that. Most people have that attitude. And because it's just like, I'm not, there's nothing for me to see here. So let's what we're going to do is break up. We're going to find the numbers to letters of the English alphabet. So what we can do is cut the English alphabet in half. So there's 26 letters of the English alphabet, right? And what we're going to do is split the alphabet in A through M and M through Z. So we're going to cut the thing right in half. So, and what we can do is use that Freemasonic squaring compasses as our guide, as our key, to understand how to put numbers to the letters of the English alphabet. So what we're going to do is notice there's a G there. So obviously the G is something that's important. So what we're going to do is walk up. We're going to put numbers to the letters, and we're going to walk up to that G. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Now we're just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? And so this lands on the G. Now, what's interesting here is that you have this entire idea of walking up to the 6 and resting on the G or resting on the 7 in the opening pages of the Holy Bible. The Holy Bible is talking about Genesis, right? You have 6 days of God doing work and resting on the seventh. So day 1, he created this, and it was good. Day 2, created this, and it was good, right? And then, of course, on the seventh day, he rested because his work was complete. So we're going to take this esoteric, symbolic, mythical, parable motif, and we're going to lay it on the English alphabet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and we're going to stop there, and that's exactly what the Freemasonic square and compasses is. Now we're going to rest there. And what we're going to do is walk back down. HIJKLM is 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And what this does is allows us to find the first block or first numbers to letter correlation through H or M. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, if you notice, what you did is create a balance there with the G. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a balance, a center point, and then 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, if you notice, we just cut the alphabet A through M and N through Z, so 13 letters and 13 letters each. And so what we can do is put those numbers onto the other side of the alphabet. So NOPQRST is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then UVWXYZ is 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So we're just going to walk through this once again. ABCDEFG is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. HIJKLM is 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. NOPQRST is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. UVWXYZ is 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now this is the gematria cipher for the English alphabet. Now, what we can do is pull out the non-prime numbers on each half of our alphabet. So we look at A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M. A prime number is a number divisible by 1 in itself. And so what we can do is pull out the non-prime numbers, being 1, 4, 6, and 6, 4, 1. And if you add this up, 1 plus 4 plus 6 plus 6 plus 4 plus 1 equals 22. Well, the only number the number that's balanced here, the number that's between those numbers, is the number 7. And 22 divided by 7 is, once again, 3.142. So we have pi. Once again, we have pi, this approximation of pi, on the left hand of our alphabet. And because we just put those numbers on the other side of the alphabet, we have the same thing. Pi again. 1 plus 4 plus 6 plus 6 plus 4 plus 1 equals 22. And now we're going to divide, instead of dividing into that central G, the 7, we're going to divide it by the T. And 22 divided by 7 is 3.142. So you have this infinite, transcendental, irrational number known as pi, or an approximation of it, and you have it twice in our alphabet. Now, what this thing does is, now, number one, to connect those non-prime numbers. And once again, you can look at, I know this is hard to explain over the air and things like that, and so it's kind of hard to follow along without the visuals. I understand that. But once again, I'm saying you can go and look at all this stuff for free. What you can do is connect those non-prime numbers with the symbol of the Jewish menorah. It's the exact symbol. And, of course, the central, it's a 7-branch menorah or candelabra, and the central pillar is what rests on the 7. And so we have that central pillar that rests on the G and T. Once again, the Freemasonic square and compasses of that G, telling you something special about that G. And then we have the rest of the candles that reach out to the non-prime numbers. And once again, that helps us create pi. Now, why is this important? Because what's known as the tetragrammaton. This is Jehovah or Yahweh, and this is something that is heralded by Gnostics and alchemical Christians and the Kabbalists and mystics and things like this. And so what you have is this representation of God, it's Yahweh or Jehovah. Now, what this translates to in the Bible is, number one, the tetragrammaton is symbolized as pi 7, pi 7. You can look this up on Wikipedia. Please do. You scroll down half the page, just look up tetragrammaton, and you can see that the tetragrammaton, this holy name of God, is represented as pi 7, pi 7. Well, that's exactly what we find in the English alphabet. It's the exact same thing we find. Pi begotten by 7 and pi begotten by 7. Now, why is this important? Because tetra means 4, and this is the pi 7, if you will. And then grammaton, gramma means, well, it's where we get the word grammar. And gramma actually means message. So there's a message behind this stuff. Why else is this important? Because in Latin, the father comes from the word pater, which means pattern. Of course, where do you find patterns? In mathematics and geometry. But pater Father is also in Latin AB. Well, what's AB? Well, it's the alphabet. The alphabet. So we have two names of God, Tetragrammaton, telling you about grammar, and then you have in Latin AB, telling you about language. So we have these two representations of God, and it's telling you about finding this in the English alphabet. So 1 second here. Sorry, I just had somebody come in. Okay, so here we have this representation of God, and both of these representations of God are telling you that there's something in our alphabet to find this great creative force. Well, of course this would be in our language. Why? Because in the beginning was the Word, and this is what they're talking about. So now, to even go further, the Tetragrammaton in the English Bible, in the King James Version of the English Bible, is known as Lord God. This is Yahweh Jehovah. There's two names of God in the Bible, and this is Lord and God. Well, using this cipher on Lord and God is LORD is 2254, and this equals 13. Once again, we broke up our alphabet into 13 letters each, and God is 724, and this equals 13. Well, 13 plus 13, Lord and God is 26, and there are 26 letters of the English alphabet. Why else is this important? Because the Tetragrammaton in the Hebraic cipher, when we look at Hebrew, when we go to their gematria, when we go to their Kabbalah, we find that it's the letters He, Vav, He, Yod. He, Vav, He, Yod. This is the numbers 5, 6, 5, 10. Well, this equals 26. So we look at the Hebrew gematria. We look for God, equals 26. We look at English. We look at Lord God, it equals 26. We look at the number of letters of our English alphabet, it equals 26. And then we go and look for the name of God, and this is Father, or AB, talking about your alphabet. And so all of this stuff has been occulted, it's been hidden, it's been kept from the general public. And this is just the bedrock of where this thing, I mean, there's so much that you can do with this. You know, the things that I'm explaining here right now is just the tip of the iceberg. And what it allows us to do is understand that there is nothing literal about the Scripture at all. There's nothing. We're not supposed to take this literally. What it's doing is trying to point to us gnosis. It's trying to point to us symbolism. It's trying to unveil to us the symbolic nature of Scripture. Now, most people, once again, shy away from Scripture. Why? Because it's been perverted. It's been bastardized. It's been polluted. It's people that have kept this knowledge, kept it from the general public, kept it from people like you and I. So we will look at the Bible and look at the modern interpretation, the literalism, what most people call fundamentalism, extremist, the takes on the Bible and things like that. This idea that Jesus Christ is my personal Savior. This was a man that lived 2,000 years ago, and I have to worship him. None of that. What this allows us to do is recognize that is all. It's a myth. It's an allegory. It's a parable. It's talking about bringing all the different sciences together. And this being symbolism, astrology, psychology, astronomy, numerology, mathematics, bringing all of these things together into a holistic science through our language. And this is what is being kept from, once again, the general public. And so when we go and we look at something like the Holy Bible, right, and we see that, God, this is just, there's nothing divine about it. No, there's actually a lot divine about it. The problem is that divinity has been masked with the literalism. Things that allow us to understand that, hey, there's mathematics behind this thing. This has been kept from the general public. Why? So we will not investigate these things, right? So this is what I'm trying to unveil or unravel for people in a very clear-cut, very concise, very straightforward way. I know that's a ton of information. I know, but it's very important. It's very, very important because this allows us to sort of reconnect with our past, reconnect with understanding that the people that have crafted these things, people that crafted the Gothic cathedrals, people that crafted the symbolism behind Freemasonry, people that crafted the Star of David, people that wrote things like the Torah, the Zohar, the Talmud, the Holy Bible, things like this, these were not savage people. These were not stupid people. These were extremely, extremely, extremely intelligent people. And what they were trying to do was pass on information to us about the nature and divinity of ourselves, and they were doing that through the very language that we're speaking right now. And so this is why this is important. Now, to get back to the conspiracy, if we want to understand what these conspirators are doing, the people that are perpetuating all the the horrors that we see across the world, if we want to understand what they're doing, well, we better understand the knowledge system that they use. Right? Does that not make sense? Because they test this from people. So the first thing I would do is start learning math, start learning numerology, start learning astrology, start learning symbolism, because this stuff is all over, man. It's all over. And, there's many different researchers out there besides myself that is pulling this information out and showing it to people and saying, hey, none of this stuff is evil. It's just been used for evil. So that's kind of the cipher in a nutshell anyway. So I don't know. I know it's a lot of information, and there's so many different places we can go to let people know. So basically what I've done in the last 3 years with this cipher is I've written 3 books. I have 3 books, Pi in the English Alphabet, Volume 1, Volume 2, and a book called Peacock's Tales, The Alchemical Writings of Claudia Pavonis. And I'm working on Volume 3 right now. To help people that if they want to start learning this stuff, I try to make this very easy to understand, a lot of graphics, things like that, so they can walk through and start learning this stuff themselves. So the thing I want to point out is that what I did in the last 3.5 years, is kind of take this thing on a world tour. So I basically went and looked at all the different ways and places that we can see this cipher, see it in the symbols, and all the different ways that we can use this. So I did videos on things like breaking down the name of Jesus Christ, breaking down the name of Moses, looking at things like chess, dice, billiards, looked at the solar system, looked at the 12 ages of the zodiac, looked at the 12 disciples of Christ, looked at all of these things and looked at them in depth and walked through them and looked at the numerology and the mathematics behind them to let people know that this stuff is everywhere. It's everywhere, and it's in the language that we're using right now to speak to one another. And I think once you start to learn this, at least for me, it has allowed me to understand the divinity of myself and the people around me. Now, the problem with this is if you don't have the control of your ego, well, how quick, if somebody was passing this information on to you, could you get an ego or, a God complex and start saying, well, I know this information, I'm going to keep it from everybody else and rule the world. I just posted this internet meme, by the way, of Prince William, and he's in the Squadron Air Force, and he's got this patch on the side of his left shoulder, and in the center of the patch is, I think it's a Knights Templar logo. I might be incorrect about that, but dead center in the middle of this patch is the symbol of pi. Now, most people, 99.99999% of the people, are never even going to notice this. But what he's doing, in the very symbolic and slight and occult way in which these people work, is it's presenting this to you and saying, ha, look at me, look what I know, and look what you don't know, you fucking losers. That's what he's saying. There was in fact, I think this was like last year or something like that, but it was Prince William and his father and his brother, and they were sitting they were sitting getting pictures taken by all this paparazzi, right? And the father, I forget what his name is, but he whispers and reaches over and whispers to Prince William. He's like, and he called the people that were taking pictures swine or pigs or something like that. That's how these people think, And obviously we know this, but this is what they know. This is what they know. And so if we want to be the divine ones anymore and not be seen as pigs or swine, we want to be the pearls, well, then we better start educating ourselves.
Darn right, we better start educating ourselves. And one thing I want to ask you, maybe, I don't know if you're the right person to ask this, but it's been said by Einstein's theory of relativity that the universe is boundless but finite. And if you think about it mathematically, that description, it may seem paradoxical, but it kind of makes sense. I mean, there was an ancient Greek named Parmenides who talked about how space and time must be illusions because when you move, you're moving through an infinite amount of spaces, because like you go on a number line, for every point on the number line, you can always make a smaller point because decimal points will go into infinity. And the same thing is true with time. If you see a hand moving on a clock, the clock hand has to move through an infinite amount of spaces because, again, decimal points go to infinity. The number pi is a perfect example of that, and Parmenides was trying to say that implies that space and time are illusions because nothing can travel through infinity. And if you think about Einstein's theory of relativity about space being boundless but finite, the universe being boundless but finite, a number line, it's finite in the sense that it has a point A and a point B, start and end point, but it's boundless because the decimal points on any given number can go into infinity. So this description that I've just given of the universe being boundless but finite, do you agree that a number line is a perfect representation, that yes, that is definitely true, and that yes, that implies that space and time are illusions?
You know, I think ultimately this is an illusion. This is a hologram. This is sort of a matrix, right? I mean, we could even say, you know, this is like a geometric matrix, right? Now, if I said that to like sort of like a modern scientist, like a, you know, reductionist sort of mechanistic scientist that has a tendency towards atheism or agnosticism and things like that, if I said, hey, man, we live in a geometric matrix, right? Well, they'd be like, oh, that's nonsense. Right? But then if you actually look at the words, geometric matrix, geo comes from earth, means earth. So geometric, well, metric means measure. So basically, we're looking at earth measure, right? So, of course, well, that's how we do science. We measure everything from the land that we're standing on right now. We measure everything from our earth. So it's a geometric matrix. So is it geometric? Of course it is, because we're using measurement to understand the earth and henceforth the heavens. Geometric matrix, a matrix, we say, we live in a matrix. Oh, that's a bunch of New Age nonsense. Well, not really, because matrix actually comes from the word mater, which means mother, and this is where we get the word matter. So our material world is created with geometry and measure. That's true. That's an absolute fact. So when we look at the universe, we look out into the universe. What the Kabbalists were understanding, the Gnostics were understanding, the alchemists were understanding, and what is being taught, what is symbolically being hidden, or that is underpinning all of the different scripture, is that this is a we could say a projection of our imaginations. We could say an illusion. We could say a matrix, that sort of thing. But that's in my opinion what it really is. Now, when you look, let's look at the Star of David. What's happening with the Star of David? You have a symbol point. You have a star or a triangle pointing up and one pointing down. Well, this is just recognizing that once again, base consciousness, divine consciousness, terrestrial, celestial, heavens, earth. It's the recognition that the human being is dead center of those two stars. That we are this sort of like central node, or like this balancing point between everything that's above and everything that's below. And the reason that this is important is because what that symbol is telling you is exactly that this is an illusion, and the illusion is created within the human mind. Now, who cares what Marty Leeds thinks? Let's look at the Kabbalion. The Kabbalion, which is this classic book of Hermeticism, the first Hermetic principle is, wait for it, the all is mind. The all is mind. The whole thing is a mental creation. It's a creation within our imagination. And so when you look at something like the Star of David, that's exactly what you see. You see that star pointing out, and it's pointing as far as you can possibly go, pushing your thoughts out as far as you can possibly go to the edge of the universe. And when you do that, what's going to happen? Well, it comes right back into you. It's infinite. It's infinite. Let me say that again. It's infinite. Where's infinity? Well, the word is telling you where it is. It's in the finite. What's smaller than a human being? You know? So when we look at, let me give you another example of this idea of, this is one I find really interesting, and how we can see that how Scripture has been completely manipulated, completely distorted. When we look at the opening pages of Genesis, right, we have, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, and God said, let there be light, and there was light, and it was good, and God separated the waters from the waters, right? We have this idea that it was a firmament, and God separated the waters above and the waters below. Okay, well, what is being said here, right? Well, Until you go into symbolism, until you go into philosophy, that's just a bunch of hooey. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Why are there waters above and waters below? Well, what happens when you look into water? It's a reflection. Your left eye becomes your right eye eye becomes your left ear becomes your right, etc. You have that reflection. Well, so if we have waters above, right, we're going to use the Star of David as our key again, Freemasonic square and compasses as our key again, that heaven pointing up. Well, what's up there? It's water. It's water, right? And then we go down. What's down? What's below? Oh, it's water again. So what you have is water reflecting on water. So you have a reflection upon a reflection. Well, what happens when you put a mirror in front of another mirror? You get an infinite series of reflections, right? But it's not really infinite. It's not an infinite reflection. It's only the appearance of infinity. And that is what is being said within the opening pages of the Holy Bible. Why is it water reflecting on water? Because it's a reflection upon a reflection. It's only the appearance of infinity. And we can actually see this within the human mind. It's this idea that you can think about thinking, right? Now, what's also interesting is that when it says there's waters above and waters below, and it's kept, and there's in between the waters above and below is a firmament. Now, firmament means a vault of sky, right? Well, if you look at the etymology of the word firmament, firm means like securely fixed in place or strong, right? Ment comes from the Latin word mentis, which means mind. So firmament means a vault of sky. And where is this vault of sky? Well, it's securely fixed in the mind of the human being. And that's what it's saying. And so when we strip away all the bullshit of the literalism of something like the opening pages of Genesis, you realize that they are passing on a deep psychological, philosophical, and scientific understanding of our reality and understanding of the human mind. And this, once again, this same idea to help us understand the illusion of, or the projection of our imagination that is this reality. This is the same thing that's being expressed in the symbol of the Ordo Templi Orientis. It's the same thing that we find in the Star of David. The Lakota have a very similar symbol. There's a triangle pointing up and a triangle pointing down. You see it in the Freemasonic square and compasses. You see it in alchemy. It's because all of these people are trying to pass on this deep occult truth. You know. Now, if the whole universe is an imagination, right? Then there really is only two things: the imagination of the heavens and earth. So really, the only thing, if you will, I don't mean this completely literally, so just hang with me here, but really the only thing that's going on in the entire universe is here, on Earth. On Earth. Now, don't listen to me, who once again, who gives a shit what Marty Leeds thinks. Here's Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Right? It's saying that in the beginning, God created basically one thing. Everything that's out in the heavens, that's a reflection of what is happening on Earth. Now, if you know this, and you know that inherently, philosophically, you know that this is what's going on, that this is the universe. We are the universe, and we are the universe looking at itself. Well, then, if you could take control of the world, what would you be doing? You would be playing God. You would be playing God. Now, when you look at the back of the dollar bill, and you look at that triangle, right? People see the back of the dollar bill. They see the all-seeing eye of God, evil symbol, NWO, Illuminati, New World Order, this sort of thing. Bull fucking shit. Bullshit. That's not what that symbol means. Now, has it been used for evil? Once again, oh yeah. Has it been used to represent that pyramidal structure, that top down, we're at the top, we're the all-seeing eye of God? Yes, but what the all-seeing eye of God is representing is that you are the apex of the triangle, that the divine force through all creation exists within everything in creation, and it exists within you. And that's why it's the all-seeing eye of God, that God is looking at his creation because it's an imagination, and he's looking at it through you. And that's the all-seeing eye of God. That means God, the divine, the force, the intelligent force behind creation, whatever it is you decide to call that thing. And let me say this, that any name that you give this God falls remarkably and ridiculously short from ever defining this thing. What that symbol is actually representing is the empowerment of the human being. Now, if you were in power and you were an evil jackass, well, what would the first thing you do? Take that symbol and pervert it and distort it and bastardize it and place it everywhere. So the common person that just sees the evil that these people perpetuate, they look at that and they say, what do they say? That's an evil symbol. No, it's not. It's not an evil symbol. And it's time that we take these symbols back. Because what these symbols are ultimately talking about is the divinity and power of the human being.
Right, and I didn't want to confuse the issue when I said that the Star of David on the flag of Israel is an evil symbol. If I said that, I apologize. The point I was trying to make was when the Rothschild Zionists chose that as the symbol on the flag, they had evil purposes. It had nothing to do with the Jewish religion. It was for purely satanic purposes, and in the case of the flag, it was to symbolize Saturn, which symbolizes Satan. But I fully do understand that symbols are, even like the swastika, it's not an evil symbol. No way. Not at all. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But I do have some sacred geometry stuff that I do want to discuss with you. The first is the Tree of Life. There seems to be so many different things that people have shown with the Tree of Life that seem unrelated and all, but there definitely is something to that. So tell us the who, what, when, where, why, and how of the Tree of Life to the best of your ability, that symbol.
That's one that's really kind of hard to go into without visuals. I mean, there's just so much that is being expressed within the Tree of Life, within the 10 Sephiroth, God, I don't even know where to go there. I mean, without really going into depth, let's look at the symbol of the tree before we go into anything like that. Let's look at a tree first up. Obviously, our entire world, there's trees everywhere, right? Well, what is the symbol of a tree? Well, number one, when I say tree to you, what you think of a tree, right? Well, what tree are you thinking of? Are you thinking of a pine? Are you thinking of an oak? What are you thinking of? Right? So, number one, when I say tree, that's just a word that's coming out of my mouth to express the symbolism of the tree. It's not the thing in and of itself, right? The tree is the thing in and of itself. So the word is just there for us to communicate about it, but it's just a symbol, right? So the words that are coming out of my mouth when I say tree, when we look at a tree, those two things are not the same. The tree is the thing in and of itself. The tree is given to us by the Creator. The word that we're speaking is just for us to be, to interact with it, to be able to communicate with one another, right? Well, what we just did there is understand the deep nature of the symbolism of our reality, that our reality is best understood with symbolism, because the word tree is not the thing in and of itself, it's just a symbol of it. So everything we speak of, just when I say Andrew's not the thing in and of itself, you're the thing in and of itself. Andrew's just so we know what we're talking about, right? But it's not the thing in and of itself, it's a symbol. And of course that word or that name Andrew is created with, 6 symbols, ANDR, EW, right? So we have symbols that come together to be symbolic of something, and it really kind of gets back to this idea of understanding that our world is completely symbolic. And of course, in order to understand this and intuit this and be able to go through your world and understand the deeper philosophical aspects of our world, you have to study symbolism. So, the Kabbalistic Tree of Life is basically, it's a symbolic study. Because it's not like there's actually, just like in astrology, it's not like there's a crab in the sky or something. And this is why a lot of modern people laugh this stuff off, because it's there's a big crab in the sky. I'm into astrology. No, what it's representing is something symbolic, And so this is the same thing that's going on with a lot of these studies. Now, the Kabbalistic Tree of Life is important because ultimately the Kabbalistic Tree of Life is presenting to us the 32 paths of the 32 wondrous ways of wisdom, the 32 paths of spiritual enlightenment. Same thing that's found in, because you have, let me back up a little bit, 32 paths. Why 32 paths? You have the 10 emanations of God, or the 10 Sephiroth, which is I don't even know what they all are right now, but Nitzach and Tiphareth and Jabura and Yesod and all of these, right? And you have the 10 Sephiroth, and this is created with the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. So you have the 10 emanations of God, or the 10 Sephiroth, and you have the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, and this combined study of the language of Hebrew and then the symbolism of the Sephiroth, or the Tree of Life, the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, gives you the number 32. 32 wondrous ways of wisdom. And then, of course, when you look in Freemasonry, we look at the Scottish Rite sect of Freemasonry, we see that there are 32 and 33 degrees of Scottish Rite Freemasonic ascension. So we have that number 32 once again. What this is talking about is something that's at the core, that's found not within the it's within the imagination of the human being, but it's found within the numbers themselves. That to make this spiritual, divine, ascension process, this is understood that it's inherent or innate in the mathematics in itself. Now, when you add 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7, etc., to the number 32. So we're going to add all the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to 32. When you add this up, it equals 528. Well, this multiplied by 10 is 5,280. And this is the number of feet in a mile. And in one respect, what this is embodying symbolically is if you will, the steps, the feet that you make in your journey, in your spiritual journey through this material dimension. So it's just kind of a quick idea of why 32 is important and what the Kabbalistic tree of life is encoding there. Now, 32 in English gematria, there's a bunch of really important words that 32 equals. So, like Christ equals 32, religion equals 32. There's just a slew of really important words that equal 32, and this is what this is pointing to. So, I know that's kind of a quick breakdown of the Kabbalistic, tree of life, but this stuff is it's deeply embedded in our world and everything around us. And once again, this is why this stuff is not taught, because, once again, we look at Freemasonry, we see, it's like if you see evil in Freemasonry, well, then chances are you're not really going to go investigate or give a shit about the number 32 or 33. And yet these are key numbers in helping us to understand the architecture of our creation.
Yeah, I fully do understand that, and it's a shame that, in a sense, you do need visuals to explain it, but you did a pretty good job, even though this is purely an audio-based show with no visuals, but there is another form of...
Yeah, it's just really difficult trying to explain this stuff over the air, too, because it's just people, once again, because people have been so turned off by mathematics, and we're also talking about symbolism, and we're doing this to our voice here. It's really hard without really seeing this stuff in front of you, and I think when people do see it laid out in front of them, they really get a grasp of it, if they're willing to explore it, if they have an open mind. Anyway.
Yeah, and I do encourage people to watch your Free Your Mind presentation. Even though I wasn't there the day you gave it, I did watch all the Free Your Mind presentations on YouTube. They are all up there waiting to be seen. I encourage everybody to watch those and use your own discernment on everything, of course. But one other area of sacred geometry that I want to talk about, the Mandelbrot set, the whole thing about fractals. They say you can't measure the length of a coastline because for every distance there will always be a smaller distance because, again, decimal points go into infinity, but you can measure the length of a coastline if you use fractal geometry. The Mandelbrot set looks like a beetle, and the unique thing about it is you keep going into the Mandelbrot set, you keep magnifying it, it just keeps going into infinity, even though the shape itself is a finite size. And it's also been said that the Mandelbrot set is a perfect metaphor for how infinite consciousness works and how your actions affect everything. I mean, one analogy I like to use is if the powers that be were to murder someone that they perceive as a huge threat to their agenda, like a David Icke or a Jordan Maxwell or an Alex Jones, for example, those people have very large Mandelbrot set representations of themselves within the greater Mandelbrot set, unlike maybe a sheeple person who has a much smaller size representation of the Mandelbrot set. Like the more well-known and more of a public figure you are, the higher your Mandelbrot set representation will be. I mean, the bigger your Mandelbrot set representation will be, and consequently, if the powers that be kill you, they will cause karma on a massive scale, because when they kill you, that will affect everything within the Mandelbrot set. Your Mandelbrot set shape will become greatly affected the moment they kill you, just like how every action you do affects everything, albeit at a small level, because you cannot change one point within the Mandelbrot set. It's the size of it without changing everything within the set. And I like to use the analogy of the powers that be killing someone, because that would cause bad karma. That would cause a great reverberation throughout the Mandelbrot set. Well, that's just an example, but in regards to the work that you do, what can you tell us about the Mandelbrot set and how it is so influential in our everyday life?
Well, the Mandelbrot set was, it was uncovered by this mathematician. He actually worked for IBM, and I think he was looking at, I don't exactly remember the story, but he wrote an entire book on it, and this Benoit Mandelbrot is his name. And basically what he did is he created this mathematical object. And what this mathematical object is, as you were explaining, it's fractals. And what it is a set. So I think it's the actual equation is like z equals z squared plus c. But really what it does is allows us to understand, once again, the simplicity of a lot of these things. The Mandelbrot set, all you do is you take this geometric form, and say we're going to take a triangle, and you put it into this equation, and then you get the sum or the total or whatever, and then you just throw it back into the equation, and this is called a set in mathematics. And so you do this, and you do this with like 1 billion iterations. You don't even have that many. You just do it with like 1,000 iterations or whatever. And what you start to see is very forms that look very organic and natural within our creation. And and the other interesting thing about this is eventually you automatically come back to the object that you started with. So it's this idea of not only a very strong philosophical idea that we find within Scripture and things like that. It's also something that we find in the mathematics, that we start with something simple, we get extremely, extremely complex, and it doesn't matter how complex you get, you're automatically going to come back to that first principle, that first simple object that laid the foundation for the complexity to arise. Now, this is, once again, this allows us to understand the illusory of, the illusion of our reality, if you will, because this is something that in the Mandelbrot set, and you can look this up on YouTube and things like that. There's a bunch of really great documentaries on it. But what you can do is kind of get lost within this Mandelbrot set, and you find all of these forms that look very natural and organic, and then ultimately you come back to, once again, that source, that first principle, if you will, the first geometric object that you started with. Now, in Scripture, this is where we find why geometry is underpinning, mathematics is underpinning so much of this, because you have this idea that, Protagoras said, man is in, what did he say? Man is in the image of God, or man is the measure of all things, is what Protagoras said. And this is also the idea of God made man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. And this is Genesis 1:27. It's saying that if you want to understand the divine, right, if you want to understand this God, well, the first thing you have to do is just look at yourself, because you were an expression of this thing. So it started out with its own, simplicity or whatever, and it doesn't matter how complex this universe is and how impossible it seems to try to comprehend and apprehend the thing in and of itself. When you go and understand this very simple mathematical principle, you understand that this is what's at the core. It's once again the bedrock of the foundation of our creation. And this is what these ancient people understood. Even if they didn't understand fractals, they understand that you can see this in nature. You find this in geometry, actually. When you create a Star of David, right? Well, you create that circle, and then there's a triangle pointing up and a triangle pointing down, and then you have that hexagon in the center, right? Well, what's interesting is you can put another Star of David in that hexagon. And, of course, that creates another hexagon, and then you can put another one in there. And then you can put another one and another one and another one, and it just keeps going and going and going. And so geometrically, even in something as simple as the Star of David, we find this general philosophical idea of fractals within that in and of itself. As if the universe started with one Star of David, and it doesn't matter how many Star of Davids you make, at the end of the day, you're going to come right back to that original thing. So that's sort of the philosophy that's underlying fractals, and why it's really an extremely important mathematical find, because this allows us, once again, if people are familiar with this, a lot of people are pretty hip to this now, because it's been around since I think mid-60s or something like that. And so, but when you see this, you see nature in that. You see coastlines, like you were saying. You see mountain ranges. You see trees. You see lakes and things like that. And it allows us to understand that, hey, man, if we can model this so easily, well, who's to say that there isn't an intelligent force behind creation that's modeling our universe? To me, it makes absolute sense that it is. So that's just kind of how I view the Mandelbrot set and fractals, anyway.
I'm glad you gave your take on that. And there is another sacred geometry shape that is so popular, and I it's especially popular in the work of Drunvalo Melchizedek, and that is the flower of life. It seems to appear in a lot of places in antiquity. The flower of life does, as Drunvalo has explained. Do you know anything about the flower of life? If you do, please tell us all you know about it.
Yeah, this is where. Oh God, this okay. Let's actually let's not look at the flower of life, because let's look at the seed in which grew the flower. Because the flower of life is an expression. Basically, what it is, essentially it's just a bunch of overlapping circles. Is really all it is, and it creates these sort of petals that we see. And there's once again, you can look this up. I mean, there's a bunch of people that have covered it, like Nassim Haramein has covered it and showed how this thing works in 3 dimensions. We see this in, I think it's the Forbidden City in China. There's a couple dragons that are out front of the entrance, and they're actually, one of them has its paw on one of these. And I live in Oregon, and I was driving down 7th Street here the other day, and I noticed that these 2 dragons were actually out front of this Chinese restaurant, and it was the same thing. There was the 3-dimensional flower of life. So this geometric form, this is something that Leonardo da Vinci drew as well. But this geometric form, when we look at how it grew from what's known as the seed of life. And the seed of life is basically, it's the Star of David again. I mean, that's what it is. It's the Star of David. It's 6 petals. And it's basically this idea of, the 3 coming together to point up and 3 pointing down. And it's, once again, embodying or withholding all of these philosophical principles and sacred geometric principles that help us understand the sacred science of the holistic and sacred science of our universe. When you start multiplying the seed of life, which is once again 6 petals, it eventually creates the flower of life. Now, why does it start with the seed of life? Why does it start with 6 petals? Well, let's go back to Genesis. Genesis did, once again, God did his work in 6 days and then rested on the 7th, right? Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, and now I'm done. I'm going to rest on the 7th. And this is exactly what we see. We have the 6 petals in the seed of life, and then they all come together at one point. Why is this important? When you think about this philosophically, number one, and look at Genesis, well, dude, God is all-powerful. He's omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent, right? I mean, here's this being that created the entire universe, and Genesis is telling us that he needed 6 days to do it. I mean, what a slacker. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, obviously that's symbolic. Obviously that's allegorical, and obviously that's, there's a parable or a riddle there. What that is talking about, just the same thing that we see with the Star of David, same thing we see with Seed of Life, is the 3-dimensional mathematics of the human being. It's up, down, left, right, forward, reverse. It's X, Y, Z with its opposites, giving 6 directions of space. And then that 6 directions comes together. There's a confluence of those 6 directions onto that central origin point. And that central origin point is the consciousness of the human being. And this is what these symbols are talking about. And this is what the opening, one of the things that is being unveiled to us in the opening pages of Genesis. It's recognizing that the seed of life, once again, let's go to fractals, right? If you comprehend this world, if you walk through this material world and looking at the 6 directions of space and looking from that central origin point and its 7th point, well, then we should assume that the great creator, if it's fractal in any way, did the same thing, right? It's the same kind of motif. So we see it in Genesis. 6 days resting on the 7th. 6 directions resting on that 7th. Central point. And what it's saying is that God that started the whole thing, the God that began the entire universe with as above, so below, triangle pointing up, triangle pointing down, 6 directions of space, resting on the 7th, is within you. It's within you. And this is what they're talking about here. And so this is the seed of life that, of course, created all of life. It was the seed. And once again, then the seed created the flower of life. Now, what's also interesting is that when you look at, once again, let's look at a tree, right? Let's start with a seed. The seed grows a tree. Tree grows up, has its branches, right? A bunch of birds come, build nests, and all these, basically this ecosystem in and of itself. And then it drops a seed, and then that seed goes into the ground. And then what happens to that? Well, it makes another tree. And then what happens? Well, it drops a seed. And then it makes another tree. And then it drops another seed and makes another tree. And so what do you have here? What you have is this is almost like this irrefutable philosophical understanding that the world is fractal, because that's exactly what we see with a tree. And of course, and this once again goes to the seed of life. This goes to the Kabbalistic tree of life. All talking about esoterically, symbolically, the same idea to help you understand your role, your place in this world and in this reality. And so this is one of the things that is being expressed with the flower of life. And you can even look at the flower of life as this the myriad expressions of God, but actually coming back to a very simple core principle, and that is, what is it? Well, three-dimensional mathematics, X, Y, Z. It's pretty damn simple. I mean, most of us learn this. I mean, if we were actually taught it, most of us could understand this very simply, you know. And so, once again, this is one of the things that is being expressed with the flower of life.
I'm glad you talked about that. Interestingly, while I don't know if this is directly related to your work, but during my interview with George Kavaslis, he made a very interesting statement about crop circles. He said that the crop circle, even though it appears to be a two-dimensional representation in the ground, it is actually, if you were to see the holographic 3D projection of a two-dimensional crop circle, it would be, well, really, really fascinating to say the least. And the point behind that is he claims that 70% approximately of crop circles that we see are made by extraterrestrials with generally benevolent intentions who are trying to guide humanity in a particular direction. The remaining 30% are either secret government technology created or the consciousness of Mother Earth created. But the point is, the interesting fact is the two-dimensional hologram, a two-dimensional image on the crop circle has a 3D holographic projection that we cannot see in visible light, but it is there. As someone who understands sacred geometry and symbolism, can you understand that that would be the case? And if you do, can you maybe elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, crop circles are very anomalous in many ways because we really don't know. I mean, we obviously know some of them are created, you know, some of them are not that well crafted, you know. But, you know, a crop circle is really, it's like, okay, well, who created this thing? Like you were saying, is it aliens? Is it government? You know, is it some government technology? Is it Mother Earth in and of itself? Sorry, one second.
Yeah, there is a percentage factor.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry. So we have this sort of like anomalous factor within in crop circles, and we say, well, how do we sort of decode these things first and foremost? Well, obviously, what the crop circles are relaying to us, in this is just plain as day, is geometry. It's geometry. So if there is a message behind any of these things, you know, whoever created them, aliens, government, Mother Nature, you know, the sun coming down with its, you know, angelic rays of light and creating these things, I mean, who the hell knows, right? But if it is speaking to us and we want to deconstruct these things and try to understand the message that is being conveyed to us, well, then obviously we're going to have to understand geometry and mathematics, right? I mean, that's just pretty, that's kind of cut and dry, right? What's really interesting is that there was a crop circle, and I'm not sure when this was done or where, but there's a crop circle that very clearly encodes pi. And I'm sorry, I'm completely forgetting the guy's name that actually decoded this thing. But when you lay it out, it's very simple to see, and it's basically just, it's like, you know, 3, and then it goes 1, then, you know, 4, then 1, and so you can see that whoever created it, even if this is just some sort of like, even if it's like a group of people somehow that's, you know, going out and stomping through the fields, even if that's what it was, well, obviously they're trying to convey a message to people, and I think that's what we need to really kind of wrap our heads around when we try to understand crop circles. So as far as like the 3 dimensions of it, of course, you know, I mean, obviously anything in 2 dimensions can be brought into 3 dimensions. So, and the crop circles are laid onto the ground in 2 dimensions. So I think the first thing that we should do is understand them 2-dimensionally and then try to model these things 3-dimensionally in computers and see if there is anything there, you know. I don't spend too much time looking into it. I definitely have delved into crop circles. There's one that's one of the what do I want to say here? One of the crop circles that I saw was actually, somebody showed it to me, was the number. Sorry, one second, man. It was the number 8. and this is laid upon the ground, right? And it was huge. I think it was like several hundred feet long. Well, what you actually have is you have the number 8, and then within the center of the number 8, where it crosses, is another number 8. Now, why this is important is when you look at the sun actually creates the number 8 in the sky. I'm sorry, 1 second here. The sun actually creates the number 8 in the sky every single year, and this is called an analemma. And this is Greek for pedestal of a sundial. So what happens if you go out on your lawn and you place a stick in the ground, right? And every day at noon or whatever, you go out and you place a rock down, right, where the shadow is. Well, if you do this after 364, 365 days of the year, what it's going to naturally form is the number 8 on the ground. So you look at something like this crop circle, right, that you see that's like several hundred feet long. We don't know where it comes from, things like that. And then you say, okay, this is aliens, this is government technology or some shit, right? Well, when you actually look at what this thing is trying to convey to us, it could actually be the geometry of how to understand the path of the sun. Now, what's even more important is that this analemma that creates an 8 in our sky that we can map on Earth, right? We can take, once again, take that stick onto our lawn and map this thing. Why this is important is the rays of the sun take roughly 8 minutes to reach Earth. So think about that for a second. So, and it's actually, I think it's like 8.2 minutes or something like that. But roughly in whole numbers, the sun's rays takes 8 minutes to reach Earth. Now, we look and it's like, okay, well, it carves out an 8 in the sky every year if we map it, bring it onto the ground, map an 8. Takes 8 minutes for the sun's rays to reach the Earth, and then we look at the number 8 in and of itself, and we say, well, where does the number 8 come from? Oh, it's just man making up some symbol to designate the number 8, or Mother Nature taught it to us, or the sun taught us it. And these Gnostics, the people that actually have passed this information on to us, we're trying to purvey this to us. We're trying to help us understand this. Now, so then we look at crop circles. We look at this one that's number 1, 99% of them are all geometric, and then we see this one that's clearly showing this number 8. Well, is it so wild to think that number 1, the sun is conscious? Number 1, that it's bringing down these balls of light, and these balls of light are creating these things? This is speculation. I don't know. I have no idea. But I don't really see a lot of people talking about that. So this is one of the things that I think will maybe, with the geometry and things like that, help us understand these crop circles. So.
All right, I can understand that too. And, well, I think we might as well briefly touch on gematria. You talked about how you assign numbers to letters, and you can do the same thing with words, but I don't think you spent a lot of time talking about how that correlates with sound and the sounds that certain letters and words make, how that ties in with gematria. By the way, we have 22 minutes left on the show, so talk about this sound in regards to gematria.
Well, the sound is very important. Number one, and there's a study called somatics, and this is where sound actually will create form. So, and this is very well understood in many circles, that basically you can take like a plate, if you will, and put and make it vibrate, put sand on top of the plate, make it vibrate, and then at certain frequencies you will get these geometric forms that arise from you playing with the sound, tuning the frequency to certain pitches. Now, what's important is that, so if we understand that in this, we have a science that understands how geometry is formed with sound. And it's a very well-known science. So we see this and we see, okay, well, now let's go back to, in the beginning was the Word. In the beginning was the Word. And God said, God spoke a word, let there be light. This idea that God, with his, out of his mouth, if you will, created the universe by speaking the universe into creation. Now, this is also in Hinduism. You have the exact same thing. In the beginning, there was like this primordial waters or primeval waters, and from this emerged this great Om, this sound, this Om, that sound. Well, this is the same idea, the exact same idea, that in the beginning God created this, this vibratory essence, this sound, this word that came out of his mouth. The other one that I've been talking about lately is the one that I found in it's the Chalam Balam. It's the Mayan creation story, and I'm paraphrasing this, but it's basically like the word of the one unloosed itself from stone-like silence and shuddered all of eternity. So it's basically, in the beginning of creation, in the Mayan creation story, God said a word. God spoke a word. And so, okay, well, it's like, oh, Jesus, what a bunch of, what were these Mayans thinking? They were just crazy. They were superstitious. They were just trying to make sense of their reality. So they crafted these cosmologies and stories to help them understand, or there's a reality to it. And we just have misconstrued and misunderstood what these ancient cultures were talking about. So when we look and, when we look at the science of semantics and we say that, hey, God spoke a word, this divine intelligent force behind the underneath creation spoke a word, and what rose from this word was the geometric form of our universe. Well, shit, man, that's actually just rather reasonable when you look at it. When you strip away all of the, if you will, the fluff and the symbolism and things behind it, and you just get right down to the core, the meat and potatoes of it, you realize, hey, man, that's pretty reasonable. And so this is what's important with, the sound. Now, once again, looking at fractals, we're creating these sounds right now. We're speaking the sounds of God right now, and it really now, and then how do we choose to speak? Do we choose to express our love for one another? Do we choose to express to commune with one another and speak highly of one another and try to educate one another and try to help one another out? Is that how we choose to speak? Well, that's up to us, because we're sort of we're given this free will to do what we will with this. But it helps us understand, I would say, the power of the very words that we're speaking. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words never hurt me. That might be true, except words do hurt. The pen is mightier than the sword. Well, what are you writing with your pen? Well, words, So this is, this kind of helps us understand what's behind these mythologies.
All right, thanks for giving your take on that. And I believe it was you that during the Free Your Mind conference, you asked everybody to cover their ears, and there was silence in the whole room, and you cover your ears and there's silence, you can hear the Now, one might say, well, that's just power of suggestion, and you just managed to convince everyone to hear the word when they did that. Was that you? And if that was, can you please explain the science behind why, if this really is not power of suggestion, why you would hear the word when you cover your ears and there's total silence?
Well, number one, this is I got this from a guy named Bill Donahue. He has a site called hiddenmeanings.com, and he has I highly recommend going to his site. Basically, his YouTube page is probably the best place to get him, but he has a just slew of videos, like over 650 or 700 videos or something like that, talking about spiritual concepts, looking at everything from Zoroastrianism to Hinduism to Buddhism to Taoism to Christianity, breaking apart the Bible, looking at the esoteric, symbolic nature of all of these things. So I got this idea from him. Now, is there anything, quote-unquote, scientific about plugging your ears and hearing this spacious sound and then therefore attributing it to this vibratory essence that created all of creation? No, absolutely not. There's nothing that, at least thus far, that we understand that there's anything scientific about it. But think about it this way. If you were going to, how do I say this? If you were going to try to encapsulate the entire universe, right? If you wanted to comprehend the whole thing at once, well, the complexity of the universe is just insane, right? You can't possibly do it, right? Because in one instance, there's a crocodile eating a fish. In another instance, there's two people making love. And another instance, there's a star exploding. And another instance, there's a galaxy being formed. And another instance, grass is growing. You can't comprehend the whole thing at once. If you tried to do that, if there was any way that you could try to comprehend the wholeness and the unification of our universe, what you would ultimately you would come to is this numbing sound, if you will, this Om. That's the only thing you could possibly do to try to encapsulate the whole thing, because there's just so much going on that ultimately it's going to come back to just this idea. Now, when you plug your ears and you hear this inside your head, well, you can do this at home. Just sit down, and people do this in meditation all the time, but sit down and plug your ears, and you're going to hear this. Well, if this great creator being does in fact live within the human vessel, and it is speaking this vibratory essence or this word, well, the human being should be able to have access to it, right? Once again, we're going back to fractals. God made man in his own image. In the image of God created he, him, male and female created he, them, then that essence, that force is within you, and you should be able to access that. So that's the idea behind that. And the power of suggestion, when you're saying the power of suggestion, I understand what you're saying, because it's very easy to lead people down a road. Like, I want you to think this way, so I'm going to present you something, and then I'm, almost like the carrot in front of the horse or whatever, right? And it's going to constantly lead you here. But the point that I like to make with most of the stuff that I'm talking about is that you don't have to believe me at all. You don't have to follow me. It's not like you have to, believe what I'm saying, listen to what I'm saying, or buy my books to check all of this stuff out and seriously philosophically contemplate these or ruminate on these things on your own time. Especially when we look at the mathematics and things like that. So that's, just try to address some of the things that you're talking about here. So.
Yeah, I don't believe it was power of suggestion either. I do think there really is some science behind that. I guess we might as well conclude with a couple of mathematical shapes. If you've ever seen that cartoon, Donald in Mathemagic Land, one of my favorite cartoons when I was a kid. During the segment, they talked about Pythagoras. They said that Pythagoras and his Pythagoreans, they had a sacred symbol that they viewed as their emblem, and that was the pentagram. We talked about the Star of David. That's the 6-pointed star. The pentagram, on the other hand, is a 5-pointed star, and it's usually the star shape that people usually think of. It's got a pentagon in the middle, and in the Donald and Mathemagic Land cartoon, they talk about how it's such a remarkable shape and all. It does the golden rectangle thing, something to that effect. But to the best of your knowledge, can you give your take on why the pentagram is such a significant shape?
This comes right back to these ideas that this divine force, this creative, intelligent force, put its mark upon you. That it's to understand it and the mathematical language, numeric, sacred geometrical language that it uses to create this universe. It put those principles right on your, right in the human vessel, and created you with it. And this is why the number 5 is so important, because all you have to do is, look down your hands. You have those 5 fingers, right? 4 fingers and the thumb. Now, why is the pentagram important, right? Well, when you draw a perfect pentagram, what you find is with this ratio of phi, as you were saying, it's called the golden mean, the golden proportion, and you find this in the pentagram. So if you look at one side, when you create the 5-pointed star, there's like basically 2 lengths of line. You have a longer length and then a shorter length, right? Well, what this is expressing is phi, which is the golden mean, golden ratio, and what it is this number 1.618. So if you go to measure that pentagram, one of the sides of the star will be 1, and then the smaller will be 0.618, right? So the number 5, when we look at the geometry of the number 5, is encoding this key ratio that we see within so much of our creation. Galaxies are built like this, or with phi. Tornadoes are built with this. The human body is built with phi. In fact, this is one of the things that is being expressed with the Vitruvian Man, Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. If you stand straight up, this is roughly, it's general, but basically your feet to your navel basically equals 1, and then your navel to the top of your head equals 0.618. And so the human body is basically based on this proportion of phi, and we find this within the 5-pointed star of the pentagram. So if the Creator was trying to communicate with us directly in the way that it does, and said, okay, well, this ratio that's obviously important, that permeates our reality that we see in flowers, the sunflowers and hurricanes and galaxies and things like this, and the human body, well, where would we find it? Well, all we have to do is look down at our hands. And then we have to look at that number 5. And this is why it was one of the secret emblems, one of the myriad reasons why it's one of the secret emblems of the Pythagoreans and the Neo-Pythagoreans, because this is embodying one of these key mathematical principles that we see all over. Phi is actually encoded all over. It's encoded in the Sumerian tablets. It's encoded in the Gothic cathedrals. It's encoded in the Great Pyramid of Giza. It's encoded within. Just so many of these ancient paintings that we see. It actually uses the ratio of phi, this golden triangle, and so that's why it's so important, because once again we find this phi, and all you have to do is look down at your hand. So this is one of the reasons why it's so important. Another interesting thing about the pentagram is that the pentagram, the phi is called a golden mean, or a golden ratio, or a golden proportion, right? Well, it's the balancing point. That's what mean means. Mean is a balancing point between two extremes. Now, and 5 is actually the balancing point when you look at like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, essentially, right? You have between 0 and 10, the center number is 5. And then, of course, the golden mean is called a mean, and mean means a balancing point. Well, nature in and of itself is balanced off this ratio. The whole thing is balanced off this ratio. So when we go into the material world and we try to measure the material world, you're never going to, I'm not going to say you're never going to find this, but in general, you're not going to necessarily find this number, this exact number, 1.618. What you're going to do is find numbers that balance around this. And this is why it's so important, because what is the symbolism, the geometric symbolism behind the pentagram is recognizing that our entire universe has this equilibrium or balance to it. And this is one of the things that 1.618 that we find in the pentagram is expressing. We also find this, that it's just littered all throughout the Parthenon, the Greek Parthenon, of course. We find 1.618 just all over this thing. So this is a key principle that is very easy to understand. We find it in the pentagram. Children can understand this. I mean, how many children, this is the point I would like to make, how many children, just by stream of consciousness, by their subconscious, they just naturally draw pentagrams? Like, I did it all the time when I was a kid. I would just be drawing with stars and, suns, and then, like the hillside and the horizon and things like that. And I would just be naturally, just by stream of consciousness, drawing that 5. Well, what's encoded in that 5 is the balance that helps us understand the golden, the divine proportion of the human being.
Right. We have, I can give you 8 minutes and 45 seconds to talk about this subject. I don't know if you've looked into this, but anybody who's studied the work of Richard C. Hoagland knows that there's another form of sacred geometry at work in the world, and that is the whole thing involving torsion field physics. There was a 2012 documentary that aired only like twice on the Sci-Fi Channel. After the first airing, it got pulled because it basically exposed the whole torsion field thing and how many sacred sites are hot spots, like especially the 19.5 latitude, I believe. Have you looked at all into the whole thing about torsion field geometry in the world, and if so, what have you found? You got 8 minutes 15 seconds.
Not too much. I mean, I know what you're talking about. I know that the storm on Jupiter is at 19.5, right. And then I think if we look at Hawaii itself is at a latitude of 19.5 as well, I want to say. And actually, it's been a while since I've actually looked at this, so I haven't familiarized myself enough with it to really speak on it. So we might want to talk about something else. But I believe that by literally drawing the Star of David and putting it within the Earth, that we could say the base to slope angle of that triangle actually hits 19.5 degrees. So, but I really shouldn't talk about that because I'm not too fluent with that. So,
okay,
what you're talking about.
Yeah, but getting on that, there is something else involving the 19.5 thing, I believe. You say you draw the Star of David in. Well, that sort of ties in with another shape that people are often very familiar with in the world of sacred geometry, and that is the Merkaba vessel. Put a triangle in a triangle, basically, and that is what I believe the Star of David is. You can make a Merkaba vessel shape out of that. What can you tell us about the Merkaba vessel? You got 6 minutes, 45 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, this is the same thing that we were talking about before. I mean, the Merkaba is basically this throne, right? Is basically the idea that there's this throne that God sits on, if you will, or that that sends you up to the heavens or whatever, right? And as you were saying, it's basically this, triangle pointing up, triangle pointing down in 3 dimensions. This is one of the why am I missing the octahedron or whatever? One of the platonic solids. Excuse me. And what this is, same thing that's expressing that we see in the Seed of Life, the Star of David, the Freemasonic Square and compasses. It's the exact same thing that we're talking about. It's talking about the divinity of the human being. So one of the things that the Merkaba, Abba, is once again, we're talking about AB or BA, alphabet, same sorts of things. So we're talking about that divine force that exists within our language, but then we're also talking about once again, that 6 directions of space resting on the 7th. Where does the great God sit? The central point of 7. So that's one of the things, once again, the inherent geometry of the Merkaba. So it's like how many people that put out web pages and things like that try to wrap their head around what the Merkaba is, and just if you lay a little geometry to it, it answers it straight up. Let me say something about the number 7 too. This is once again the Merkaba. You have the 6 directions resting on the 7, seed of life resting on the 7, Star of David resting on the 7. All of these things that have that central point, with the central point being the consciousness of you. 7 is the central point. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, resting on the 7. 7 in the English cipher is SEVEN, and this gives us the number 65551, and this equals 22. And 22 divided by 7 is 3.142. So we have this, once again, this approximation of pi that we find twice within our alphabet that helps us understand that the nature of pi in and of itself helps us understand the nature of the heavens, about how we cannot ever truly grasp the heavens. And we find that within the human being. We find that the central origin point of the human being. And so what this allows us to do is understand that all of these principles that are being put forward, all the symbolism, like for instance Enoch, right? Enoch lived 365 days, and when he morphed into or evolved into or was anointed this position of Metatron, which is known as the Lesser Yahweh. Well, it's just like what is the Bible even talking about here? Well, when you realize that Metatron's cube is this principle that actually embodies the Star of David once again, that it is 12 spheres around one, then you realize that it's like, oh, okay, well, what they're talking about is geometry. What they're talking about is cycles of nature. What they're talking about is numbers, numerology, and mathematics. And that understanding this canon of number will help us understand who we are and things like that. So, and once again, why would somebody like Metatron live to 365 days? Well, because they're talking about the sun. And so it allows us to take all of the baggage of all of these principles, all of these symbols, all the baggage that we see with the indoctrination and the dogma, and it really just kind of like fluffs it away and says, okay, well, now we can take a look at this with whole new eyes, and it's not this fire and brimstone, doom and gloom thing. That we've been taught, and so this is one of the things that helps us understand that. So that's one of the ways of looking at the Merkaba, anyway.
All right, glad you covered that, and I can give you 3 minutes to talk about this. Lay to rest any notion that the swastika is a malevolent symbol. Well,
yeah, I mean, this is exactly what we were talking about before, and I know you mentioned this as well, that, the swastika is basically what it's talking about is two things. It's talking about the cross, which is extremely, especially in geometry, especially understanding the cycles of, northwest, east, south, spring, summer, winter, fall. It's understanding the cycles of nature, but the cross is spinning, as you know, right? And so what this is geometrically expressing is the idea of understanding once again what is the cross in 2 dimensions. Well, it's just a cross. It's just 2 lines. But if we brought that cross out into 3 dimensions, what would you have? Well, you would have that 3rd dimension of the Z, and therefore there would be one more line. And that's the line that's actually pointing out into the origin point. So that actually becomes the 6 directions of space resting on the 7th. This is the exact same thing that you find in the Chi Rho. The Chi Rho is a symbol of Jesus Christ, of course. And this is actually 6 points, essentially. It's the letters X and P coming together in Greek, but it's 6 points coming together to the central axis point. And so when we look at something like the swastika, swastika in the cipher equals 33, by the way, for all you esotericists and occultists out there that know about the number 33. But what the swastika is representing is that the northwest, east, and south, and then the fact that everything is spinning, everything is cyclical, everything moves in circles, everything moves in cycles, everything is constantly, it's a breathing in, it's a breathing out, it's an up, it's a down, it's a, if you keep going to the east, you're going to get west. It's this idea that everything is in cycles, and this is one of the things that the swastika is representing. Now, the important point about the swastika is that the central point is, once again, that if you want to get out of the spinning, the spinning material world and get back to the source, you have to get back to the origin point. You have to get back to that origin source and get out of the spin, if you will. And that's one of the things that the swastika is representing. So that I'm trying to explain that as short as I possibly can, man.
I'm glad you did. You did a good job of it. Well, show's come to an end, so I guess I might as well tell you the same thing I tell all my guests. Some people say it's rude that I tell my guests this, but I don't see any rudeness behind it. The fact is, one of my goals of this show is to try to get as many different people on the show as possible before I give any one specific guest double dips. I think that's the fairest way to do it, to try to get all different kinds of fascinating individuals on my show from all different areas of research to cover all sorts of things. So while you are indeed a fascinating individual, Marty, I will almost certainly, most likely, not be asking you to come on again because there's a lot of other fascinating individuals I have to give a chance to have some glory on my show. But I must say it was a pleasure having you on. This was one of my more informative interviews, and I must say I'm glad you didn't have to leave for work early because it enabled us to talk about very important stuff. So I bid you good day, Marty, and I do wish you luck in your future endeavors. Keep doing your research. You've uncovered a lot of stuff, and I hope you keep uncovering stuff.
All right, thanks, man.
You're very welcome. Take care. Namaste. Later. Well, folks, very informative indeed. I had a lot of fun. I hope you did too. I learned a few things myself. But next week I'm scheduled to have Fritz Springmeier on. He said he wanted to do a show. We had some issues last time I tried to get him on where he completely forgot I had a show scheduled and he went on vacation and didn't have it marked on his calendar. He did apologize for that and said he wanted to do a show. So hopefully next Wednesday he will be on. That's Fritz Springmeier. He also presented at the Free Your Mind Conference. We'll be talking Illuminati, Satanism, all that fascinating stuff. So namaste, everybody. Without further ado, I bid you good day. Enjoy your trek and experience throughout consciousness.